All right, it's 12:02. We have our panelists. We have some folks joining here. Uh, Again, thank you very much for joining, everyone. My name is Eric. I'll be your host today. For those who've been on our webinars in the past, we're doing things a bit differently, and we hope you enjoy it. We have a great panel with us today. I'll introduce them to you in a bit. Just before we get this going, just some quick housekeeping. If you have any questions, we invite everyone to use the Q&A button and not the chat button. That way our panelists can respond, and we'll get to those questions at the end of the webinar if we haven't answered them throughout the webinar. We'll also make the slides and the recording available to everyone in a few days. Before I introduce our panel, I'd like to take a quick moment to just congratulate them on their second place win out of close to 1,000 companies in the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals' prestigious Supply Chain Innovation Award. So congratulations for that. Wow. This is an industry award and not a technology award, which makes it even more special because blockchain took a center stage. So way to go, team. So with that, let me introduce to you our guests. Leading here, we have Monsieur Francis Lalonde. Francis is the Vice President Transportation at Walmart Canada. In his current role, he's responsible for leading Walmart Canada's fleet and transportation operations. Extensive experience in both retail and distribution operations. Francis's passion is for business, operating a safety-first organization, very important. Focus on continuous improvement and commitment to investing in people is second to none. Francis holds a master's degree in international relations, a bachelor's degree in political science, and is also a Six Sigma Green Belt. His team lives and breathes all things freight and are dedicated to carrier relations. Welcome, Monsieur Lalonde.
See?
Then we have Mr. Rod Henriksen. Rod is the Vice President of Finance and Administration at Bison Transport. Rod joined Bison in October 2015 and is responsible for the financial operations, administration, and risk management of the company. These responsibilities include the development of financial operating plans, linked metrics, and the ongoing development and monitoring of custom systems designed to preserve and enhance the company's assets, profitability, and growth plan. Rod has a master's in accountancy and a Bachelor of Commerce degree, both from University of Manitoba. And very important to note that Bison was part of the pilot in this project as an important contributor of the carrier experience. Hello, Rod. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
From DLT Labs, Sergey Balayev is Executive Vice President and Chief Strategy Officer at DLT Labs. Sergey is a seasoned C-level executive with deep experience leading enterprise technology and innovation. In his current role, he gives the global growth of an emerging leader in applying blockchain to enterprise data management. Prior to DLT, he served as CIO at Walmart Canada, led IT strategies at the LCBO, and held technology leadership roles at Easy Home, Canadian Tire, and RBC. Sergey was at Walmart Canada when this project started and through the early days of selling blockchain to the team. Welcome, Sergey.
Thank you, Eric. Excited to be here.
Also from DLT Labs, we have Pete Goenlock. Pete is the Vice President who leads DLT's freight program. He has expertise in financial supply chain and fintech systems integration from consulting engagements and leading strategic PMs for US Bank and Syncada. Pete's passion is figuring out how to optimize supply chain and freight networks through implementation of modern technologies such as blockchain. I think you found your place. IoT and artificial intelligence. He holds a bachelor's of science in mathematics, wow, with a double minor in computer science and business administration from the University of Waterloo in Canada. Pete, welcome to you.
Thank you, Eric. Honored to be here.
And our moderator today is Shannon. Shannon Hamilton is the Vice President of Growth and Adoption at DLT Labs. Her career has spanned more than 20 years, she's a young one, leading teams in operations and sales across financial services, retail, and technology. She has firsthand experience tackling significant process improvement goals in large organizations such as American Express, as well as developing evolving operational efficiencies in fast-growing startups. She's taken a progressive approach to understanding how blockchain technology will improve supply chains and is currently engaged in numerous workflow optimizations projects in Canada and is the DLT Labs in-house guru for all things supply chain. Shannon, nice to see you again.
Thank you, Eric.
So with that, I will hand it over to you. Let me just kick this off in presentation mode, and you let me, forgot to show these to the folks. And over to you, Shannon.
Great. Well, thank you, Eric. And thank you to all of the folks on the line with me today to help frame and give context and information around the project that has delivered some transformative results. So we're going to set the stage. I hope to talk very little with the colleagues on the line here from DLT Labs because we really want to engage in a great discussion with Francis and Rod. And based on some questions that we've anticipated from the Canadian blockchain supply chain members, that we can hopefully address some of the key questions and the things that are on your mind around the technology and the types of results it can accomplish. So next slide, Eric. So I'm going to do a quick introduction to help frame a little bit about who we are and the project specifically that we kicked off with Walmart. So if we could advance, Eric. So just a quick intro to who we are. We've been working in blockchain technology for 8 years and really focusing on the development of specific solutions focused around supply chain and business processes within organizations to accomplish transformative business results. We've got over 240 people now working on the technology, which is a sizable group, especially in this emerging space. And not only are we working with the likes of Bison and Walmart directly, but we're also working with some of the leading partners globally to advance this technology. We participate in a number of different forums, including with Eric and his team here, to make sure that we are contributing from a thought leadership standpoint, but also sharing our results and experience around how this technology can be deployed. What are the best practices? What are the learnings? So that we, again, can continue to see more and more organizations take advantage of it. Next slide. So this might be a familiar, and I call it an eye chart for those of you in supply chain and logistics, but it is a view of global supply chain. And as you can appreciate, there are many different parties that exist globally, let alone in Canada, that need to work together in order to ensure that we get goods where they need to be. And there are thousands of data points literally that exist in this transportation of goods, in the movement and the creation of items that end up on the shelves, as an example, in a store like Walmart. And everybody has their own data system, and everybody is intentionally not set up for success because all of those systems and all of those relationships are not connected. So it's a web of data and a web of relationships, which is why blockchain is really well suited for this industry. Next slide, Eric. What we've seen is when you can use distributed ledger technology, and we prefer that over the B word because it really speaks to what is exciting about the technology. It's the opportunity, maybe one more click, Eric, will help everybody really be on the same page. How can everybody within supply chain that needs to work together share information, create that single source of truth that I think is no longer a utopian idea. It's been demonstrated, and we're going to talk you through that. But leveraging this technology is very special in that it really resolves a number of the challenges that exist in supply chain today. So what we believe is special, and I've seen this definitely in my enterprise software career, is there are lots of tools that solve individual challenges for specific businesses. But what is special about blockchain and distributed ledger in the way that we've approached it is there are elements of the technology that when they work simultaneously together are an absolute game changer. And you're going to see that when we get into the discussion with Francis and Rod. Sharing information in real time, again, not just within your organization, but with organizations that you are meant to work with, all of a sudden puts parties on a different level. Adding smart contracts, the ability to take an agreement that you have. So, Francis and Rod have a contract that they work on. When all of a sudden you can use data and information in real time to validate information that's in a contract that you have, you can answer the question, how do you know your agreement's being followed all day, every day, and as intended? So it's super powerful. And then leveraging the immutability of blockchain. So sharing data, leveraging contracts, and then making sure that you can always point to a record of that data or that workflow or the decision that's happened in a workflow and know that it can be trusted. Again, when these three elements happen simultaneously within an organization and with organizations that you're meant to work with, you have a completely different relationship that is going to transform your supply chain. And we're going to share some great examples of how that's happening. Next slide, Eric. So what we've accomplished, and I'm going to tell just a little bit of a story, and I know Sergey, he sort of likes this one. But when Walmart approached us, we were actually talking to them about a solution that was tracking and tracing cobalt, a conflict mineral out of mines in Africa. And it was really about how do you make sure that it's being sourced ethically, and everyone within the supply chain had visibility to that. So you can imagine when we were talking to Sergey as the chief technology officer in Walmart at the time, that we could take that technology and turn it into a freight invoice reconciliation solution to address some of the challenges there. It was quite the juxtaposition. And we could do that in a little under 90 days. So our modular platform is really centered around Lego blocks that are intended to solve the types of issues that you see here that we've seen are very common and what most customers that we're talking to are looking to solve within their organization, and where blockchain is particularly valuable. So it allows you to move fast and can create very tangible results, again, as we're going to demonstrate and talk more about in a few minutes. So let's set the stage for what we're going to discuss. And again, I think many of you will be hopefully nodding your heads in agreement, at least around some of these challenges. So what we've seen and what we have experienced in the industry is pretty consistent, and it's honestly, it's industry agnostic. So whether you're a retailer, somebody who's making goods that are going onto the shelves of Walmart, you could be a carrier who's performing a service on behalf of one of these customers. Freight transportation and the movement of goods is a complex process with a lot of data. And the reason for the complexity is there are many known pieces of information at the point that a tender is made, a request for goods to be picked up. And then there are lots of things that can happen during the transportation of those goods, which means that each party, the shipper and the carrier, have two different versions of truth, if you will. They have two different opinions and realities, perhaps, around what's happened. And so because each party has their own data set, they have their own processes, and those processes are not, it's not from ill intent, but they're not working together as effectively as they could. So this has been seen across the industry, which is contributing to a significant percentage of these invoices. What I thought I was going to pay and what I was actually invoiced is not the same thing, right? Surprise, surprise. And so disputes, discrepancies, disagreements, however you want to describe it, starts to happen. And then that delays payments, right? So all of a sudden that investigation means that invoices are not getting paid as timely as they could. I've talked to a number of organizations who set things like approval thresholds. So I know that if my invoice is out by $25, it's easier to pay that invoice than it is to figure out why it's different. So there are decisions that are built into our processes and companies' processes today to deal with the reality of the complexity of data. But the reality is that is creating overpayment, payment errors, and there's a ton of administration for both parties, whether it's chasing paperwork, creating invoices. Gartner has a whole magic quadrant of companies that sit in the FAP space, so freight, audit, and payment services, who are there to untangle the web that we saw earlier of data that needs to be reconciled between parties in order to make sure these invoices get paid. So it's complex, to say the least, and I'm going to guess that there's at least a couple of these scenarios that are probably familiar to the folks that have dialed in to hear the discussion today. So that's what we've learned, that's what we've experienced. And Eric, if you just go to the next slide for me, that's why blockchain is the right solution. So distributed ledger technology addresses the issues that we just discussed. And what's more exciting is that we've now shown through the world's biggest enterprise blockchain deployment with Walmart and their national network of carriers that it is the technology that is going to significantly transform the way that information is shared between organizations. And we really are super excited to have both Francis and Rod here today to share, not just from our perspective, but from their perspective, how transformative this has been for their organizations. So just one more slide, and then I think I'm passing it over to my colleague Pete, just to give you some insight into how the solution works. But what we've created is an ecosystem now for any shipper to be able to share information with their network of carriers. And when we look at the ecosystem that we've created, it connects these disparate systems, making sure that we can leverage IoT data in a contextualized way within a business process, which is really around providing visibility and reconciliation for those invoices. So this is just going to continue to grow. And again, we're going to share some great insights for you on how it's working. So to set this up for Pete, and most of you, this will be familiar, but there are a lot of moving parts in an invoice, in a freight invoice, but 95% of what you need to know to start the invoice happens at tender. And that is a material difference in the way that we're approaching the solution. So our invoice, unlike how it's managed traditionally today, and it happens sort of around that equal sign, if you're looking at the visual there, usually it happens at the end of the process. Today with DL Freight and the way that we're managing the process between Walmart and their carriers is that tender creates the invoice at the beginning of the process. All of those known charges and all of that data can be used to start the invoice. And then as real-time events occur through the IoT data, you can start adding information to the invoice in real time and provide that support for why perhaps there was an additional weight charge. So that when it gets to when a good is delivered, you've actually already got a created invoice. You can acknowledge proof of delivery through information that you already have. And you've got a hugely improved process, 97% reduction in disputes is what we're seeing right now with Walmart. And it's a game changer. So Pete, you've got years of experience, both as somebody who's worked inside one of these freight audit and payment providers and, worked with all of our carriers on the platform. So I'm excited for you to tell us a little bit more about how this is all working.
Very good. Thanks, Shannon. Eric, if we want to go to the next slide, please. And okay. I won't need to explain much of this process to the folks on the call here. it is a typical invoicing process for freight payment. And it all starts off with, of course, a shipper and a carrier will have their tariff rates contracts loaded into their own shipper system, the carrier's TMS, etc., disparate systems. Inevitably, there will be disconnects there. And then the shipment starts off with a tender process, as Shannon explained earlier. The transportation of goods occurs, and then throughout the process, the delivery will occur. The carrier will be submitting an invoice, sometimes many days, even weeks after the actual event has occurred. And then it's at that point that the matching and reconciliation of what the shipper was expecting versus what has actually been billed occurs. So if we go to the next slide, Eric, we'll see the elimination here of 6 steps in that process. And again, we're starting with the contract rates are in one source, visible to both parties, shippers and carriers, on the DL Freight platform. So they are validated ahead of time, and the shipment, when it is tendered, as Shannon mentioned earlier, 95+% of the information that needs to start to build that invoice is known at this time. And so immediately both parties as well have visibility to the start of this invoice as soon as the transportation is is being delivered. So even before the delivery of this, both the shipper and carrier can see how this invoice has started off and can very early identify any discrepancies that may result in the ultimate invoice having discrepancies with it. So you can see at the bottom here, the steps removed from the process, and key is, again, on that carrier side, the generation of the invoice. It is being built in real time as the event occurs. So at tender, you have all of the known information, the transportation move occurs, and at that point, accessorial charges are being tracked by GPS, IoT data, and getting added on in real time to the invoice. And then the final step for the carrier is simply review the invoice, ensure that those wait times, accessorials unknown at the beginning of the shipment are added, validated by the GPS data, and then they simply submit the invoice at the end of step 4. Key to note here as well is upon that submission of invoice, it is fully approved because it has been validated throughout the process real time. So when the final submission of the invoice from the carrier to Walmart, in this case, occurs, there is no further reconciliation on that invoice. Walmart deems that as fully approved, and they are simply ready to make payment on that invoice. And Eric, if we move to the next slide. This is an automated build of the invoice. So just one more click, Eric. So at step 1, as we indicated earlier, so much information at the tender process is known already about what this invoice should start to look like. So the line haul rate is known immediately and visible to both parties. How many miles are traveled on this? So the fuel charge can be calculated. A number of stops at whether they're pickup or delivery are known. So the stop charges are added here. Are there off-route miles? So that is calculated as well, and any fuel charges with them as well. And of course, the equipment type will determine heat charges, hazmat, etc. Then the shipment actually occurs. The carrier is moving this across the road, and your various accessorials are being added and validated by GPS tracking data at this time. So wait times, proof of delivery is automated here through the use of GPS. And then one more click, Eric. Step 4 here is carriers will do a final validation of this invoice, ensure all of the charges that are to be applied are calculated and on the invoice. And then next click. All right, so final validation, taxes are added, and the invoice is ready for submission. And one more click, Eric. Thank you. So invoice is then submitted to Walmart, and payment processing will start on this invoice. And as I indicated earlier, step 5 here, there is no reconciliation no more reconciliation being done by Walmart. It is fully approved throughout that process based on the real-time build of the invoice, and then business rules doing validations on approvals. And next slide. All right. Yeah, you can probably click through a number of these, Eric, pretty quickly. Here is the architecture of, actually, if we just want to go back one, Eric. Maybe we can't go back. That was simply a slide of the architecture. Oh, thanks, Eric. Showing that there are multiple connection points from shipper systems, carrier TMSs. You can see GPS tracking data is provided as well. All of these integration points are done on a variety of different systems. We have carriers that are connected to us through multiple different TMSs, going back to custom AS400 systems that are integrated with us using API technology as well. So it provides that one single source of truth for full visibility to both the shippers and the carriers of all of the information provided, and is allowing for very efficient analysis and resolution. And we can continue forward now, Eric, thanks. And I think we're back to Shannon.
Awesome. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because I actually think our discussion with Francis and Rod will probably bring this to life, and people would love to hear from them. But the results, what I've found completely amazing about the technology is just the ability for it to provide value to all parties in this ecosystem. So again, it's not just Walmart or a shipper benefiting from this. There are tremendous benefits that are witnessed by the carriers as well. So let's use this as an opportunity to go into a discussion. We can bring to life some of the benefits through the real life testimonials of the folks that we've got here today. So excited, Francis and Rod, to hear a little bit about your experience. So we've talked about this notorious B word, blockchain. It's often something that comes with some fear and uncertainty around what it can accomplish. We've heard that there's been a tremendous, a significant number of disputes, 97% reduction. Francis, maybe start with you. How has this process that we've changed and the technology changed the way that you're running your business and impacted your relationship with your carriers?
Yeah, thank you, Shannon. And a great job, Shannon and Pete, explaining a complicated process, a complicated improvement in 20 minutes. So very well done. And thank you for the introduction, Eric. I typically introduce myself as the transportation guy for Walmart Canada. So this was an upgrade. If I was to explain what the improvement is for us, it's massive. It's transformational, right? You mentioned it before. When you go from 30 to 40% matching rate to 98%, massive, right? On rail, water, over the road, obviously. So it's a massive change in just how we manage the whole process. It's completely transformational. Now we're at the point where before that we would have to rework everything from fuel to accessorial to all the other lines that we've seen on the slides before. Now something extraordinary almost has to happen to create exceptions. And we've definitely created that one version of the truth, which is the most important part. And that created that trust with our carriers. We've always had good relationship with our carriers. We wanted to pay our carriers. They wanted to get paid. We had hiccups on both sides, and we couldn't really figure out sometimes where the links were broken. And we don't have those conversations anymore right now. So now I'm happy that, my partners have cash flow certainty, right? They can almost anticipate to the penny what their payment will be, which is outstanding. The best unit of measure for me is I'm not receiving calls from the CFOs anymore. So before that, I would get calls from the CFO. I would get a polite call of, hey, how things are going, and then can you pay us? I don't have those calls anymore with the CFO. So now I've had a round of quarterly business reviews with the carriers this week, and we did 10 seconds on payment, and it was just a good thumbs up. And after that, we talked about business. We talked about building win-wins and really the conversations we wanted to have. We talked about our kids. We talked about our vacation. This was outstanding. It wasn't like that before. We were going into payables and receivables very quickly.
So great. Thank you, Francis. So Rod, I guess that means you're missing your regular phone calls with Francis. It sounds like you only have fun things to talk about now, which must be terrible. So is this all really working? What's been your experience? How are things different with your relationship with Walmart?
Yeah, thanks for the mic here. It's great. I can echo a lot of what Francis said there. Francis used to be on my weekly hit list to send an email to. So you haven't seen one of those in a long time, I imagine.
Yep.
The statistics in the deck on disputes are bang on. We at any given time, we would, in the past, prior to this DL solution, we would have had hundreds or even thousands of disputes at any one point in time. All of that required both Walmart and Bison to go away, do a bunch of manual lookup, checking out for old emails that might have changed something that we had in the contract or when new lanes were added. When I checked in with the team yesterday, we had one dispute. I didn't bother even getting details on that because they can be quickly resolved now. For Bison, what that means is because the transactions are handled in such an automated fashion, when our payment term comes due, payment is released, and so there's no chasing. In the old world, a lot of the dispute resolution process would only start when the payment was due, not when the billing happened. We'd only sometimes learn, when our payment was due that, the payment didn't come. So then we had to investigate and start all that manual effort. There is so little of that right now. It's almost non-existent. That means that, from our perspective, we don't have accounts receivable tied up on the balance sheet. Our cash flow is much stronger. And the thing, my pet peeve in all this, I think, is just the manual work and rework that had to happen. And most of that, it's almost entirely gone. As a guy who's responsible for the efficiency of our organization of Bison, that would just get that stick in my craw more than anything else. So pleased that most of that is gone. It's been a great solution.
Yeah, I think everyone can admit that time is better spent on, I call it value add activities, than all of the administrative stuff. And it lets everyone to focus on what they do best within their core business. So yeah, well said, Rod. That's great. All right, Eric, what do we have as our next question? So Rod, you sort of touched on this, but disputes, your accounts receivables, it's helped, right? It sounds like it's making a difference, and you've got more visibility. Again, is that been your experience?
Yeah, for sure. As I said, disputes from moving from thousands to handfuls or less, as the case was yesterday, has made a remarkable difference for Bison, for sure. A story I told in a different forum was that we reviewed our quarterly financial statements with our ownership and our auditors, and the auditors remarked how much lower our accounts receivable were period over period. And the single biggest contributor was the implementation of this solution, which brought literally millions of dollars of orders sitting in the accounts receivable that were all paid and cleaned up year over year. So it's made a noticeable difference even at the highest level. It's been fantastic in that regard.
That's fantastic. Awesome. All right. Next question, Eric. So, Francis, how has this improved the way that you're doing business? I think, we started this project off and we had a very specific process that we were envisioning we could help you solve for. But is it still doing just that? And how are you maybe approaching thinking about what you can do going forward with this type of technology?
It's a great question. We were after three things when we started the process. We wanted to resolve our carrier payment issues, number one, and we've nailed that. Right? We've heard it across the board with everybody. So the story has been very, very good. It just, you need that result to drive the level of partnership that we want to drive at Walmart. The second one is to improve our ways of working and really drive efficiency through this process. From our side, because we are using a very talented resource to resolve dispute, but also from our carrier side, because they're also using talented resource to resolve the dispute. So that improvement in ways of working, to Rod's point, has been very, very good. And I think we can both say on both sides of the fence, we're probably using our resource to do value-added work, as you mentioned earlier, Shannon, and not playing catch up on receivables, payables conversation. And the third one was that we really wanted to create that visibility on both sides. And we've done that as well. And now we know. Before that, we kind of thought we knew. Now we know. We know what's going on. We can make more proactive, educated business decisions. And we can build win-wins together because we can really, really understand where the opportunities are because we have a way, way, way better view. So lots of work, obviously, went into that. But I really, really feel good that we have really, really locked in those three objectives, and we've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish with all of those objectives. On the rework part, I know that my team, I would probably have a riot if I was to go back to the previous process. Because now they know they can see all the extra work that they could do proactively instead of looking back at payables, receivables all the time. So they surely all appreciate it.
I love that. That's hysterical. That's hysterical. We don't want you to have a riot on your hands. What could you do? I'm going to put this out to maybe Rod first, and then we'll go to Francis. But this technology is unique. Definitely, again, I refer back to those three elements that you can achieve simultaneously when you're leveraging distributed ledger. What are you able to do now that you couldn't do before? I even saw one of the questions coming up in the Q&A around, could this have been done in another way? What have you seen that you've been able to accomplish with this type of technology that maybe you haven't been able to accomplish previously? Rod, maybe let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. This is a little corny, but there's an expression that I heard that I think applies to this situation, and it goes like this. A man with one clock always knows what time it is, but a man with two clocks never knows. And that really appealed to me because there's a couple of ways of interpreting that, but as it relates to what we're talking about here, and this was said earlier, but Bison had their own set of ledgers with rates and miles and extra charges and taxes, and Walmart had something similar, but it wasn't always exact. So now the fact that we're both consulting the single source of truth means that we have, well, we've already said it, I guess, far less disputes, far less collisions. And so to me, a lot of the magic is the fact that the transactions just happen and there isn't so much manual intervention required. Maybe a second thing there that we couldn't really do before is, if Bison learned that we overbilled by 5 cents, let's say, an insignificant amount, and then the investigation proved that we should adjust our invoice down by 5 cents. There was so much work in reissuing the invoice, having it be reprocessed, wait again in the queue for payment. And we have much more control now. Although disputes are very rare, we have an easy ability to just, as you said, $25. My team's threshold is much lower, but we can adjust that down by 5 cents and get paid on our regular terms. So we have more control and just so much fewer exceptions. It's remarkable.
That's awesome. Francis, what have you been able to accomplish that you weren't able to do previously?
Yeah, I think the answer is twofold, right? Is what have we stopped doing and what have we started doing, right? So what have we stopped doing? So we stopped the rework, we stopped the manual work, we stopped chasing corrections, we stopped all those non-value added steps and really using our talent properly. And what we started doing is, oh, we have different data now. Oh, we have stronger understanding of this is where we're efficient or this is where we're not efficient. So that one version of the truth is really enabling us to quantify some of the opportunities, some of the waste in the network, because now we can really understand it and start to make some very strong, educated, data-driven business decision that we couldn't really quantify before. So even you go through the payable process, you have a couple of misses every once in a while. You have to understand, quantify what those misses were. We couldn't do that. We couldn't understand the opportunities. And now we can really understand how to build win-wins with our carriers and how we can all do things better. And it really helps drive the partnership, the reinforced partnership with our partners and all our carrier partners, and also all the win-wins that we want to build together, because that's how you keep those partnerships alive and rocking for a few more years.
Yeah, absolutely. No, important partnerships on both sides. That's awesome. Good stuff. Next question, Eric. So Sergey, let's pass it over to you for a minute. So you were the CIO at Walmart when this all started. Clearly something excited you to come over and jump ship and join us. What has surprised you most specifically about this blockchain project?
Thank you, Shannon. So the biggest surprise for me personally was probably time to market and speed of delivery. Because once we heard about kind of Francis's issues that he highlighted before and his urgent need to improve the invoice reconciliation process, which is probably, and Rod has told you stories about his side of the equation. When we were looking into it from a traditional technology perspective, it looked like your classical 12 to 18 month project, right? That will involve quite a number of people and be quite busy and involved. So, and what we would have achieved would have been just an improvement of invoice reconciliation process. What we realized when we stepped back is that why do we need to improve the process when we can get rid of it by establishing single shared version of truth, right? Just get rid of the invoice reconciliation process. And blockchain technology has those capabilities out of the box to ensure that we can deliver this fast. And I really like the question that you highlighted that came through Q&A, like what part of this whole solution would not have been possible if it wasn't for the blockchain and this thing? All of it is doable. It's just, it would have been more expensive, would have taken longer and so forth. Like if you have a huge load that you need to take from point A to point B, can you do it using a whole bunch of small cars? Sure. But if you use an equipment that's specifically designed to do it, it goes faster, cheaper, and better. Same thing happened with the underlying technology. Because if you look into the blockchain and the way we saw it then, it was, what does it give to us if we are to completely simplify it? Really, it's the tamper-proof history of events. So now nobody can go back on their word, and also tamper-proof execution through smart contracts. Once you have it, the result is huge taking out of waste, out of the business processes. And this is now when you see that instead of small armies of people all over the place, not just on the Walmart side, but specifically on carrier side, especially for smaller carriers, chasing down facts, trying to figure out what took place, what happened, what didn't happen. Now people can focus on really running the business and figuring out how to do things better. So that was probably, so time to market was a big surprise. Then it's not a surprise, but I was very delighted as well. And the delightful part was actually in having the true partnership from the business folks, transportation folks, Francis and his team, carriers, because it was amazing to have Bison Transport as our pilot deployment in full production, and also different technology teams, right? Because we had Canadian technology folks involved, we had folks in Bentonville helping us out, doing security reviews and everything else. So it took a small village, but it was amazing to see kind of the degree of commitment and willingness to partner on this whole thing. So that was a delightful part.
And Sergey, maybe I could just ask you to elaborate on one part, because I know I get asked this question a lot, but how easy was it to do this? I think there's a perception that, large organizations like Walmart have all those teams and that expertise to be able to do something like this. And, Rod, you've got a very talented technology team, but the landscape of technology, particularly in the transportation world, can vary a lot. Bison is very different than a regional partner carrier that might only have, half a dozen trucks. So how easy is it? And maybe Sergey, you could start a little bit with the technology, but maybe Pete, maybe share your experience on the carrier side around the actual implementation of something like this.
So from technology perspective, and I guess this is my advice as well for everybody, don't try to overcomplicate things and don't go on the road alone. So blockchain is a very exciting and quite an elegant technology, but it's just an underlying technology. It needs to be connected to something. It's like an engine that needs to be hooked up, connected to the chassis to drive the truck, right? Same thing is about the blockchain. So what needs to be done is that I don't think that companies, even at the Walmart size, but especially like smaller types of businesses, should be trying to come up with the blockchains themselves. What they should do, they should understand that first of all, this technology exists. Here is the value proposition, which is immutable history and immutable activities, right? Where does it come in handy? And then focus on the ROI and the business solutions. And that would allow to move faster. That's why for me, why were we able to deliver a full production pilot with Bison Transport, which is the largest carrier in Canada, in 60 days, which by the way is unprecedented, at least in my short history, right? So it's because all the technical issues, or most of them, have already been addressed as a platform. And instead of focusing on the underlying technologies and proving that it works, we focused on working with the business folks and identifying the proper requirements, figuring out the rates and everything else, and configuring to the best degree possible. And as a result of this, the whole thing went faster. Plus, the change management was hugely facilitated, because by the time we were done with the pilot, and Rod, please, please don't let me lie on this one, what we heard is from Walmart business folks and from Bison business folks saying, wow, we love it. We see the results already. How do we make sure that it becomes the norm? How do we migrate to it as soon as possible? That's the best thing. Instead of a traditional approach that we would normally have with long system implementation timelines, then selling to the business, people not seeing what they're supposed to see, right? And then you're going back and forth. So this thing was hugely facilitated.
Rod, anything you want to add just around the sort of the ease of using a technology like this? I mean, obviously, anytime you're starting something new, there's, an investment of time and a commitment to want to innovate with a partner like Walmart. But how hard, how easy was it from your perspective?
Yeah, great question. When the idea even came up and we knew that blockchain would be the underlying technology, there were probably equal measures of excitement and nervousness because we'd heard about this thing, but never really played in that space yet. We had a couple of IT folks on staff here that it wasn't their full-time job to be part of this project, but kind of worked it periodically as needed. I mean, our hands were held quite a bit by Walmart and DLT, so we were appreciative of that guidance. But to be fair, there was a time investment in getting the solution off the ground. But I mean, now that we have it and we see the benefits, it's easy to operate. The folks that implemented the system aren't the folks that operate the system, and the operators are over the moon with the things they can do now and the ease at which they can do it as compared to the old world. So for sure, worthwhile investment of time.
And Pete, you work with the network of carriers. So you've seen all, shapes and sizes, and we talked about the disparate systems. So what have you seen have been our lessons learned and the best practices, if you will, around implementing in a network like this?
Yeah, certainly. So we certainly were aware that we would have a carrier base with a variety of technology sophistication. So we had three ways to integrate with us. One is simply, depending on volume of transactions, use of our portal only. What makes the ease of that is knowing upfront 95% of that invoice is already built for you at the known information when the tender is there. And then the carriers are just adding their accessorial charges and reviewing and submitting for payment. So that eased things, certainly. And then EDI, we anticipated EDI. It is ubiquitous in the industry, but our preferred method of communication is API technology. And so we certainly helped guide folks through. We anticipated a very little knowledge of blockchain, and then to a certain degree, limited knowledge of APIs as well and how to integrate with them. We would do a 1-hour workshop with carriers on API technology. By the end of that 1-hour workshop, they were integrated with us, at least making the initial calls to find out information about their shipments. And then depending on how far they wanted to take the integration and the huge flexibility and capabilities of API, it was typically a 4 to 5 week effort and project with the carrier so that they could gain the full value of API real-time integration with us.
Awesome. Francis, this has been a good discussion so far about the technology and the implementation side. Anything you'd want to add to what's already been shared?
No, I think just reinforcing 2-3 important points from Pete. We were nervous with the level of maturity and sophistication of some carriers. It's a different conversation with Bison and CN and Ocean X, thinking of going on a railroad, boat, and some of the smaller carriers. And I think that's a big win to be able to integrate in the various ways so that we can work with folks that are at a different level of maturity from a system standpoint. And really want to call out the importance to Sergey's point earlier. We weren't having system conversations. We were having a business conversation. We're going after a business problem, and we were solving for a business problem. And when we put an engine to solve that and integrated it to use Sergey's analogy, and I think that's a key thing, right? And after that, really, it's you need the right partners, you need the right resource, so because you have to dedicate the work up front. And then we went fast. And between the 3 parties, I can tell you we went really fast.
That's awesome. And maybe just before I turn it over to Eric and see if I think we've got lots of questions from the folks on the phone, and I'm trying to be cognizant of time here. But Francis, you're driving a huge initiative around smart transportation with Walmart. What does this mean in terms of helping you support those goals and objectives?
It's huge. Like if you take it from the beginning, we have this massive $3.5 billion investment. And part of that huge investment in Canada that we've announced a few weeks ago, one of the key pillars to build a world-class supply chain. And then you decouple that, there's a few things, there's new buildings, but on the transportation side, one of the key input is to build a very, very strong, smart transportation platform. So it's the integrated application of modern tech, different management strategies in the trans systems, more predictive analysis, more modeling, more educated decisions, more speed. And that's what we're after with the smart transportation platform in a nutshell. And one of the pillars of smart transportation is around payment and audit. And we have to solve for this pillar of smart transportation. And we could have done multiple little things, and we would have done small improvement. And instead we did true transformational one with blockchain. So I can say that we single-handedly with one project, big one, this one, right? We've tackled one full pillar of the smart transportation plan. So I'm very happy about this one because now I can focus on the other ones.
That's awesome. That's great. All right, Eric, I'm going to pass it back to you to let's answer some questions from the folks that are on the line.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you everyone for the fantastic output here. Let me see what we can do here with our time remaining. Ray's asking folks at DLT what you did with a CPA organization. Mm-hmm. Interested to learn what DLT did with the CPA organization.
Yeah, so we've been members of CPA. So we've been helping them as they're envisioning, trying to understand, many of these organizations and associations are similar in that they're trying to figure out what they can do with the technology, what's possible Is it about standards? Is it about finding the right, proof of concept? And we'll lobby for a production pilot. But it's been a discussion and a collaboration with them to see how the technology can be used to help around accounting and financial transactions in the industry.
Fantastic, thank you. Jean, is the validation process to add transactions on the blockchain managed centrally by DLT?
Yeah, Sergey, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about how blockchain is. People ask the question about how is this network really set up and operating with this DL freight solution?
Yeah, so it's probably not relevant to most participants in the audience, but basically we have almost 60 different nodes, and the mechanism is operated through this one. And those nodes are shared between some of the larger carriers, Walmart, and some of them are operated by the DLT on behalf of the smaller carriers. And we'll be happy to provide more technical information offline.
Perfect.
All right. Let's see. Jeff is asking, what was the most difficult and or challenging part of bringing this groundbreaking project about?
Perfect.
Well, maybe I'll start. It's because you're in complete untapped territory. And I think that was the complexity. So you talk about the process internally, and folks didn't fully understand blockchain and or the platform or how it would work. And there's lots of things that gravitate around building a platform that are it becomes a foreign language to some folks. I'll give you an example with our auditors. So we go through, how will we audit this? Well, we don't have a match anymore. We don't have the payment platform. What do you mean you don't have a payment platform? How do we audit this now, right? So people have to look at it from a complete different lens because it is unknown. So it just takes, I think the only thing you have to do is you have to take the time up front to really educate the folks around you that are going to have to come to the party during the implementation on really what the technology is, and bring them very, very early into the process.
May I try as well?
Of course.
Yeah, just to, again, to expand on Francis's, yeah, for me, it was very similar. It was the fear of the unknown, right? And when something is unknown, people get uncomfortable. And what I've seen happen very often in those kind of situations with fear of the unknown is that people step back and try to de-risk it. And usually what they do, they go into the POCs, proof of concepts, right? And that's exactly what we didn't do. So instead of doing a proof of concept in a kind of a sheltered environment and everything else, we did a proper full production POC with the most complicated partner. And that was another kind of decision point for us. Do we go for our pilot with the small carrier with very simple operations, or do we go with the larger carrier with a bit more complexity, right? And again, it's kudos to the business team, Francis, your team, right? That jointly we decided, yes, we want to do it for real because we wanted to see the real business results, not assumed results, but real business results, right? And we chose to go with Bison, and that was the right decision because once the pilot was running in full production, people on both sides saw the business value. And for me, it was like the Shell V-Power gasoline that cleans as you drive, because once you start running your real transactions through the system, you see, wow, my rates are getting fixed that weren't fixed before. I no longer have to reconcile right away. Not that I need to do this mind stretch saying I might not need to. No, I don't reconcile already. And that's huge.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I know we're coming up on the hour here. Maybe just one quick last question from Anna, and we get this a lot, right? Do you think blockchain is feasible for small companies cost-wise?
Yeah, so I'm going to tackle that one. Absolutely. We've got some folks that we're talking to that are probably, an eighth or a tenth of the size of Walmart, respectfully. But this is scalable. We've built the platform and the offering as a SaaS offering to allow organizations of all shapes and sizes to be able to benefit from it. I'm thinking about somebody who I'm talking to in Western Canada whose process is literally entirely manual. They're, paper invoices, paper bills of lading going into back of, the trucks. When COVID happened, they literally had to find out how to get the paper invoices from the office to the people working from home. And so the ability to use the technology to leapfrog kind of where you're at is totally possible. And I think that's, a huge testament to technology, but also, some of the ways that DLT Labs has anticipated integration and deployment. So you're not focused on the ones and zeros of blockchain. You're really focused on the business outcomes, as you've heard from, Francis and Rod, but 100%.
Fantastic. So good news for the small people.
So I know we've given out a lot of information. It's a lot to digest. So there's lots of information if you go to DLT Labs /news to learn more. But on behalf of DLT Labs, Eric, the association, and obviously Francis and Rod, thank you so much for being a part of this discussion. Going first isn't easy when you're using technology like this, but your partnership and the results have been amazing. And Eric, thank you for giving us a forum with your members to be able to share our learnings.
Our pleasure. So this concludes the webinar for today. Again, thank you very much for all our guests and the folks on the webinar listening in as well. We have folks from across the world. Just a quick reminder, yes, we'll send out the presentation deck. We will send out the recording as well. If you want more information on us, head on over to our website. And I believe that was pretty much it. So have a fantastic rest of your day. And again, thank you very much for attending today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, have a great day.
Take care, folks. Bye-bye.